Hello and welcome to the video. This is the first of a new series that I'm tentatively calling Edits with Iain. To start, I have a handful of images of different types. This will be the first of two videos initially, both featuring 2 images in each. I hope there will be relatively quick edits, but if you want more detailed edits in the future, let me know in the comments. I'll leave a link for part 2 when it comes out. Today we have a floral shot and a seascape. Let's crack on with it and I hope you enjoy watching.
Okay, let's get to the first image then. Here we have some Shasta daisies near an overpass. As the sun's going down in the background, giving us almost a nice sun star. And we've got some nice nice warm tones in the petals, which is something I'd like to preserve in this. It's basically just going to be making it more punchy rather than trying to make it look any different really. I'm going to also get rid of this, what would it be, inspection platform I believe is in the background up here, which is just glinting off the sun. But what I like with this photo is you've got the brutal concrete in the background with a selection of very natural and pretty looking daisies in the front. So I will put the profile to vivid, which helps with the contrast, and then we will amp up the exposure a bit, probably about half a stop. Yep, still got some detail in there. That's the main thing you've got to be careful about with stuff like petals and things like that, is the details of like the ridges and like cell looking things that are in it, especially when it's backlit. So I have to be careful with the highlights and the whites in this, as it will blow them out if I go too over the top on the exposure like this, and then you lose all the nice detail in the petals, like the little water droplets over here. So I will bring that down a little bit and then put this up a couple, up there, and it's a very subtle way you have to put it. I might actually bring the whites down to preserve the detail a bit easier. And yeah, it's looking final still. And then with the shadows, just put down a little bit here, and pay more attention to down in the stems where it's darker. Actually I might bring them up slightly where it's just to make the image a bit more balanced, and then use the blacks to bring the shadows down. I do a little bit of texture and dehaze, usually about 5, and it's good to put it on the actual most important part when doing this, which would be the main subject. See, look, it's just a little bit, I just want a little bit extra, so 5 again. And then we will go down to the curves, which will also need to be careful with the petals on this. Nice. Darken. Then check for the whole image. A little. There we go. Makes the daisies stand out, but darkens the concrete behind to have a bit more contrast added. And then I think we'll put on the lens corrections, which I think is, this was taken with my X100V, and we'll put on the vignette from here because it's relatively central rather than off to one side, which works a bit better because this has got the highlight priority thing, so it will keep brighter bits brighter, whereas if you do it with a mask sometimes it will overlay it and make it look a bit weird, is what I found. The only other thing I'm going to do is put a radial filter when it loads. No, I don't want a brush. I want a radial, and I'll put this over the sun. And then we'll make the feather quite large. And make this quite a bit bigger. And then we will come down to the dehaze, and we'll do a little bit of that to help make the sun seem more glowy than it is, which I think gives a nice bit more atmosphere. And I think that's more or less done. I haven't changed the white balance, but it's not actually looking too far off, so I think I will add a little bit more. Go back down. Do we start at 4.6? So I think 4.9 will do it. 4.8? 4.9. I think that'll do it. And then finally I will add a crop. I think we'll go for a 4.5 and cut a bit of the overpass off. And before I forget, we need to remove this walkway. So let us do that. Very simply fill this in, give myself a bit of breathing space, and then we will remove, and this should be done. after this. Nope. Not the first one. Not the second one. Let's try another one. Sometimes it's like this, you just get some weird options, especially when it doesn't know what it's looking at. All I want is something that isn't too distracting, like this one, number 2, and then we can move on. And then finally we'll do a bit of sharpening. I tend to put my sharpening up to about 50, which is not much past what the default is set to in Lightroom. I put the radius down, and it depends with the detail is if it's a noisy image already, because if you have a noisy image and put the detail up, it brings out the noise in the image. So we'll see what that does. That seems to be alright. As you can notice, you can sort of see the background over to the right here becomes a bit more grainy, but if we mask it, it should alleviate most of that. I usually tend to put it about 70 to 80 when it starts to... I think we're about done now. And here's a full screen image of this first one. On to the second one, and we have a seascape of Trevose head with a wave crashing over the headland. Because at the time, I was there for quite a while and the sun was going down, a lot of the foreground rocks are now in shade, so I'm going to have to do a post-box crop at the top of the image. So we will go here and choose a 16:9, and that's going to be a bit too restrictive, and it still hits the top of this. So I'll have to go to a custom one, which is a 16:7, which looks a lot more promising. And then we'll go over a little bit more and put as it seems to suit it, put the Lighthouse on a third and the spray on a third, and make sure it's not wonky. It shouldn't be, as it was taken on a tripod, but you never know. A little tiny bit. Okay, so we're done with the crop, and we should start with the profile again. Adds a bit more to the contrast, as I said before. It is my preferred one out of all of them currently. Sometimes I use landscape, but other times, I'll test out landscape. This gives a slightly more washed out look, but that's more punchy. I'll actually try the landscape. Looking at it right now, landscape tends to accentuate the blues and the greens, obviously, and not be as contrasty. So we will go to the white balance, and this had a little bit more in the way of yellow in it, because the sun was going down a little bit, so by this point it was late afternoon, but as you could tell by the uncropped image, the shadows were actually getting quite long. So there needs to be a little bit of I think that'll do, 5200. And then we will start with the exposure, add a little bit. The main problem is going to be the bright white Lighthouse and the spray, so I can't go too over the top with the edit involving that, but I might have to mask it off. But it seems to be alright in terms of it beforehand, so I might just sort of invert what settings I put in here into the mask, so it makes it basically set back to where it was when I started editing in terms of exposure. So I will zoom back out again, and I don't think the shadows make all that much of a difference in this particular image because it's very evenly lit. And the whites, I can't really go too much more on the whites. And the blacks. Lower them slightly. Yeah, there we go. Just a little tad. We'll look at the again, only a tiny bit of clarity and clarity and texture to bring it out. And then with the curves we will add a little bit to the highlights. Might actually do the lights and keep the highlights more. And then I will lower the shadows a bit to get a nice rich colour in the ocean. And I think that's close enough with that. Again, about 50. Lower the radius and up the detail. There isn't too many large sort of there isn't a lot of stuff that would make it look a bit too crunchy from the sharpening, so I'll just go with 100. It tends to be on my night shots with the trains and also the photography project is what is the main one I found out with the detail that will make it show up more with the crunchiness of the what's it called? The crunchiness of the sharpening. And what else are we going to be doing? Oh yeah, it's the masking is the next job. Let's see what it makes up. Is the subject. This might actually help. But it's a bit hit and miss. is it then? I have no idea what it's chosen. Basically nothing. That was useful. I guess it's gonna... Yeah, it's not doing too well with this, is it? Okay, this is just gonna have to be a brush job. Okay, so I just paint it in, and then we'll clean it up in a minute. We'll be going back around the edge, clearing up anything that's a bit too messy around the edges. Luckily with the detect edges on, it's not too hard to get a decent coverage on it. I think that should do. And then what did we do? Exposure plus 35. So minus 35 or roundabout. Then we that minus highlight. That's plus highlights. So minus highlights to 9 or 10. And then we go shadows plus 32. And then minus or plus 4 blacks. Or minus 4 blacks. 5 will do. No, it was plus 4. I do think it needs to go down a little bit more than what it has done. You got to be careful with the whites in this photo, because if you touch even a little bit too much, it goes grey, and then you end up with a nasty looking lighthouse. I think I need to add a bit more in the way of just to get rid of the glow. I think also there's a bit of over that's actually usually a way, that's why it's looking weird. There's usually a way to tell by turning it right up. I missed a bit just here. Oh no, that was coloured in. Except that bit wasn't. probably why it's looking a bit funky. Yeah, sometimes it works well, other times it doesn't. Sometimes it's a bit of a pain to work with. I am trying to do a quick job of this, but it is dragging on a bit. Don't think we'll notice much difference in that little spire bit. It's becoming a bit of a faff now, isn't it? Anyway, let's bring this back up. Almost got it. I think that's about it. Okay, we can always... Yeah, that's definitely a bit better. Looking back at the before and after. I do think we need to do a little bit more tidying of the edges of the mask, but hopefully I've not taken off too much there. And yeah, I think that's around about it for that. We'll just check out the spray, and I shouldn't have done that, which seems to be alright. So I think we're done with that. And right turn on that. And finally we will put on the radial gradient for the vignette. And we'll spin this around a little and invert it, and we'll get this opened a bit more. Hopefully this won't be too heavy. And I think that's about done. A bit more maybe. Now I think it's going to look a bit better with a more subtle, and there we have our final image, and here's the second full screen.
Thanks for watching, and I'll leave you with some before and afters of the finished images.